Alright, y'all, we back with another video. So today we're going to be starting our Battle Guide series episode 3. We're going to be talking about how do you gain your specials faster and more efficiently. So we're actually going to be going into one of these quests to actually demonstrate that and actually talk about that. So you might be asking yourself, why do I need to know this? Well, there's a lot of things that go into actually, gaining special gauge, things, little factors and numbers that people probably don't know about that we're actually going to be talking about here today. As you know, everybody has a special skill and you want to be using them as early as possible or often as possible, or depending on the situation at critical moments. So you want to know how many special gauge you are receiving on the top end, so that way you can plan accordingly in future turns when you actually need to use your special, so that way you can have an edge in battle, right? We're going to be using Yaga as an example here because there's different amounts that you will be receiving depending on your action and what is happening in the game. So first off, it's going to be the first section. When you're using a skill, which is going to be, let's say, an attack skill, you're going to be receiving roughly about 200 special gauge. Every character has a certain amount of special gauge. I believe Gojo has like 963 or something around there, so that way you can kind of actually note how much you're going to be gaining. Now, if I were to use a buff skill, for example, I would gain 220 special gauge. So you gain just a little bit more. Obviously, if I were to show it to you here, it wouldn't like look the same because obviously Yaga needs more than a character like Inumaki. So obviously it's going to look like he gained a little bit less than Inumaki, even though he gained roughly about a little bit more. Now, let's say when you are attacking an enemy, if you are attacking an enemy, you're going to gain 200, right? But if you also defeat the enemy, you'll gain an extra 200. So you'll gain 400 in total. So if I were to attack with Gojo here, which I was kind of just demonstrate right here. If I were to attack with Gojo here and kill the enemy, right, so keep an eye on how much Gojo is going to gain. He should gain 400 special gauge here. 200 from the attack, 200 from defeating the enemy. So as you can see, I gained 400, so I'm roughly just about to get my ult. That's one way on recovering your ult. Now we're here on the final stage. So now I'm going to demonstrate how much you are going to be receiving when you break an enemy. So breaking an enemy, you will get about 1.5 times extra on top of the standard amount, which is 200 from your attack. So you will gain roughly about 300 extra on top of the 200. So you will gain 500 total special gauge, 200 from the attack, 300 from the actual break. That's going to give you 500. On top of that, all allies will receive 0.5 times that amount. So that will be 100s. We're going to buff here. Attract everybody to me. And then we're just going to use this just so I can get a little bit more damage and actually make sure I break the enemy with my skill 1. And this doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess I could do it, right? I guess I could just buff real quick. I'm not going to lose much here. That will basically guarantee that I will break the enemy with Gojo. And as you see, I broke the enemy, I defeated the enemy, and I also attacked him. I practically gained more than half of my special gauge back. That's just from breaking the enemy mainly, right? And then all allies will receive 100 special gauge, which is 0.5 times of your attack. Now that we got through that part, I basically restarted the fight so that way I can show you again since we were on the final wave. But when you also are getting attacked, you will also receive an extra 50 special gauge whenever that character is attacked. So we'll just do our normal attacks here just to kind of show you. As you can see, I just gained a little bit on Yaga and Inumaki because they just got hit. So that was about roughly 50 special gauge. All right, so we fast forwarded a little bit. So now let's talk about, recovering special gauge when using special moves. Now, as you know, when two characters have their special gauge full, they're able to activate a cooperative special move, which then allows them to do, a cooperative damage and etc. Right? So as you see here, I'm just going to demonstrate this real quick. We're just going to normal attack these enemies. So we're going to be getting 200 from them. But then we're going to ult with Gojo and ult with Yuki. And what this means is when we use a cooperative move, this will provide everybody on the team, except the two who use their ult, 200 ult gauge. So right here, I should have full ult gauge with Inumaki, and I should be really close with Yaga because this will provide me a total of 400 ult gauge for these two characters here. Remember, the only ones who do get ult gauge from this is going to be the two characters who didn't ult. You saw they got 200 twice. It moved up for once for the attack and then again for the cooperative special. What we're going to do here is we're going to see if we can manage to let one of our characters die. So we're going to be attacking this big guy with all normal attacks with all our characters. Well, except Gojo. We're just going to be buffing with him because we don't want him to kill anybody yet. We're going to see if he can manage to kill one of our allies. Hopefully that's soon and not just the poison. So in this next turn, they should be dead. As you can see, Inumaki died. And what I wanted to talk about was when the next character that comes in from your backup support slot, so as you can see, it was Panda, he does receive 300 special gauge immediately as soon as they come into the battle. So that is a very nice notion to keep in mind of. Now that we basically talked about how you get your special gauge and what the numbers are, let's actually talk about, how much you're going to be needing for specific and required characters. So to find out how much ult gauge your character may need, you can actually go to your character details and actually figure it out. So if you wanted to be, like a mathematician or whatever, and actually want to calculate how much special gauge, like one for one for everything that you're doing in the entire fight, you can do that by calculating and figuring out how much max ult gauge a character has. So for Gojo, for example, he has 973. So if you manage to do, let's say, for example, 5 or 4.5 buffs, 5 buffs basically with him, with his third skill, you will receive his ult gauge just like that. But keep in mind, if you do manage to kill enemies, you can gain even more ult gauge, right? You won't gain 220 from just this. You can also gain 200 from the attack and then 200 more from the kill. Max ultimate gauge usually never changes at all, so every character, when you receive them, you'll be able to see what their max ult gauge, no matter what level they are. That will be the same max ult gauge from level 1 to level 91 to 97 to 130. It will always remain the same. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. There are some characters, like, for example, we don't have them just yet, but there is like Domain Expansion Megami, who requires an absurd amount of, max ult charge to be able to ult, right? So you want to have like plenty of ways to actually get access to it. So you want to make sure that you know how much you're getting, because when you're trying to maximize how much special gauge you're getting, you want to try to get your Domain Expansion Megamin to get his ult, so that way you can use it and activate your Domain Expansion and do tons of damage, because it's an AoE effect that affects the whole entire game that you're doing. Like the whole entire stage will be affected by this Domain Expansion. So you want to make sure that you're getting your special gauge when you need it and when you have to activate it, and it will last for a few turns. And then there's some characters, for example, that will have less special gauge than the standard, but even if they have a less max ult special gauge and all that stuff, they will still follow the standard formula of how much they gain through skills and combo attacks, etc., right? On top of that, there are some characters who do have skills that recover special gauge or increase the efficiency of your special gauge recovery, like Inumaki, and you could use him to recover your special gauge even faster, right? So in his case, he would gain 220 from the buff, and then he would gain an extra 124 from the actual skill. Keep in mind, as you upgrade the skill as well, it will increase the total amount that you will be gaining from the special gauge charge. So he's one of the characters. And then, for example, you have like memories, right? There's going to be some memories like this one, for example. It's special guards charge amount, so it's a little bit different. So it's a little bit harder to calculate, but it's 30%, so it's not that bad. But there's like memories like the free one that you get from the Formidable Foe, which is this one right here. Formidable foe. You get this for collection. It provides you 360 ultimate gauge when you get it at 3 dupes. It's a little bit less at no dupes, but regardless of the fact, it still provides you ult gauge, you know, so you can still use this and kind of charge up your special gauge. So there's different various ways that you can do it. So I'll kind of give you a TLDR timeline of how much special gauge you gain from all your actions, and then we'll close it out with that. So we'll just go back to the characters so you can kind of understand. It'll be easier to visualize it. We'll use Gojo for an example. So normal skills, the ones that you use to attack with, are going to give you 200. Killing an enemy is going to give you 200. So if you attack an enemy and you kill the enemy, you're going to gain 400 total. Breaking an enemy gives you 300. So you'll gain 200 from your attack and then 300 from the break. So that'll be 500 total. On top of that, you'll also gain 0.5 times of your normal attack, which would be 200. So you're going to gain 100 for all your other characters. And then when you take damage, you're going to gain 50 special gauge, roughly. When you use a cooperative attack, the 2 characters who didn't use their cooperative special move will gain 200. And when the character comes in from your backup slot after like one of your characters dies or leaves, they will immediately gain 300 special gauge. That's basically the amount of special gauge that you are going to be receiving from all your actions. And on top of that, you can see your max ult gauge number on each character by going to your character screen and kind of just, you know, selecting on them and seeing how much they may need. As you can see, Yaga 1,558, while Gojo only needs 973. So yeah, I tried to explain it to the best of my ability, and that's what I came out with. If anything is wrong or anything, which I highly doubt it, you can correct me in the comment section below. But like I said, I highly doubt it. I've already been, you know, testing and doing all of the math and everything, so we should be good there. But yeah, anyways, that's basically the special gauge guide for, you know, the battle guide episode 3. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.